friends, it has been 4 months since I've done any kind of a reading wrap up on my channel, and so I thought I would do one giant compilation of just kind of some stats for the months and my favourites and least favourites. I'm not going to go over every single book that I've read over the last 4 months because we'd be here for a couple of hours, I think. But I thought I would just give some stats, some updates, and my faves and least faves from the months, just as a kind of refresher, and then I'm hoping to get back into doing regular monthly wrap-ups again from the end of November. July, August, September, and October's reading wrap-up. I read 38 books in those 4 months, which is something I'm really happy with. The majority of them were audiobooks, with 24 of them being audiobooks. Only 2 were completely physically read, which is a massive shame and something I would like to change, but I did have 7 that I was doing multi, so some of that could have been I read most of it and listened to a few chapters on audio, or I listened to most of it and read a few chapters. But yeah, 7 are multi, and then I had 5 volumes of manga that I read in that time. For my star rating, I had 2 2-stars, 10 3-star reads, 3 3.5s, 24 star reads, which that's clearly my go-to rating, 1 4.5, and I did have 2 new 5-star faves, which I'm very excited about. Actually, no, one of my 5 stars actually was a reread, which was 6 of Crows. So 1 new 5-star fave. And I do also have a new favorite author I think I can finally say, because I know I'm weird when I think of like what my favorite book is or some of my favorite authors. Sometimes I feel like I haven't read enough by a single author to really kind of narrow it down, but I feel like I'm confident in saying I've read enough by this author to say that I think she is now one of my favorites, and that is Miss Darcy Coates. I have read, I think, 4 books by her in these 4 months, 3 of them being in October, and have just loved them all. I've really enjoyed them, and yeah, one of them is going to be my favourite from the month. So yeah, I'm excited to talk about that. New favourite author, which is not, it's a rarity, it doesn't happen all that often for me. So for favourite book and least favourite books for the months. So in the month of July, I'm going to have a bit of water first though. I already whipped out a Christmas cup. For the month of July, my favourite book for the month of July was Vanya and the Wild Hunt. This is a middle grade book by Sangu Mandana, and this follows Vanya, who at the beginning of the book, she has no idea, but she's about to discover that actually her mum is a witch, and she is the daughter of a witch, and she has magical, or the ability to have magical powers herself. And basically, in where she lives, her mum had made a deal with the local, I think they're called demons, that the mum won't hunt the demons as long as the demons stay away from her and her daughter. However, someone has attacked these demons. They are blaming her mum. They come and attack her mum. Vanya stumbles upon this, manages to save her mum, finds out about this massive world of demons, and so for her protection is sent to go away to this school where her godfathers, who she's never met, live and teach. She goes to stay with them to learn about magic, to learn to control magic and all of that, and then things progress from there. It was really fun. I really enjoyed Vanya as a character. She is someone that struggles with ADHD, and seeing that kind of represented was really nice. She is also a Indian British child and struggling with that kind of, again, representation of that identity. And where she goes to this school, there is a mix of different people from different backgrounds, and it's really nice to see them all interact. I'm assuming, based on where it landed on, that it is going to have a series, and I am going to dive straight into the series because yeah, I really enjoyed this. If you like middle grade, I would check it out. I think it was really good, and it's made me want to read Sango Mandala's adult books as well. Really enjoyed this book. I think I gave this one a 4-star. Then my least favorite book from the month, which I would have spoken about in a vlog, which I don't think I've actually even put up yet. My content is going to be a bit all over the place going over this next month, and my hair is going to grow and change colours constantly from different videos because, yeah, I have vlogs filmed, but I do want to still put them up. So I did talk about this in one of that vlog, but it is The True Queen by Alison Weir. This is a 500, 600 page historical fiction book inspired by real events, inspired by Catherine of Aragon, and it is about her journey coming to England, being married initially to Edward and then getting married to Henry after his death, becoming the Queen of England, and the kind of 20-year period of being queen. I think it was 20 years, having 1 child, unsuccessfully not having any more, and then being dethroned in a massive turnover of the English state. Her being very true to the Pope, her being very faithful, her having family that were then trying to help her being ousted as the queen by Anne Boleyn, and yeah, basically the whole story. And it was just a very dry book. It's not the sort of book I necessarily would have been drawn to. It was one I read as part of a friend book club, and I always finish my book club books. It was very historical fiction, and I think it was written by a historian, and it was very dry for that sense. I do like historical fiction, but I don't tend to read historical fiction about actual historical figures. There were definitely interesting moments, and I did definitely learn stuff about Catherine of Aragon. I didn't know she was Spanish. That's one, for instance, because it does speak about in this book how they changed her name for the English people, so she would have an English name. Her name is Catalina. And so yeah, didn't know that, didn't know about any of her family, and also some of the stuff that Mary, her daughter, went through that I guess then made Mary become the queen that she was really interesting, but just overall it wasn't a fun read. It felt very much like reading a history book. And yeah, also this is obviously the author's interpretation of Catherine, and I have read another book about Catherine of Aragon, coincidentally, another book club book, The Constant Princess, Philippa Gregory had a very different interpretation of Catherine's personality, and I kind of preferred that one. But obviously we don't actually know how it would have been, what Catherine was actually like. This was nearly 500 years ago. So yeah, that was my least favorite book for July. Going into August, my favorite book of the month was Sword Heart by T. Kingfisher. This is a adult romantasy or fantasy romance book, a very cozy book following our main character. Names are going to escape me, but our main character, she is living with her widow's family, and she's been caring for her great uncle by marriage, and he passes away and ends up leaving her his entire fortune and estate. His blood relatives are outraged by this, and so they lock her up and basically say that they're going to make her marry her cousin by marriage so that he can then inherit it. And then she fears that basically from that they are then going to kill her off. She decides that she is going to take her own life, because in doing this, then everything that is left to her will go to her blood relatives, which are her nieces. And so she takes the sword off the mantle, whips the sword out, and a man pops out of this sword, and he is bound to this sword and basically is bound to protect the owner of this sword. So they then bound together, they break out of this house, they go on a quest to go to these priesthood to basically get this priests to stand up for them. And stand up for them sounds lame, but prove that she has the right to this and help her in that sense. So it has a bit of a quest element, a bit of a traveling. They get to this priesthood and then traveling back. She is kind of feels like she's being hunted. People start to realize about this magical sword, so then that gets into shenanigans. And I just had such a good time with this book. It was very cozy. It was very funny. Our main character I thought was really funny, but I also really enjoyed the dynamic between her and the sword, who ends up becoming her love interest. I really liked that they are both older characters. She is in her late 30s, and I didn't realize that I felt like I needed that. I felt like I needed a romance with older characters, and so I really enjoyed that as well. And yeah, I just had such a good time with it, and it's opened me up to T. Kingfisher as an author, and I'm very interested in reading more from her. I have bought, oh, you can see it right there. Paladin's Grace. I'm really interested in that series by her. So yeah, really enjoyed this book. A very nice, cozy romantasy. And so definitely a genre I think I want to look more into in terms of romantasy. And yeah, a nice little one to scratch that little romance itch that I had. In comparison, my least favorite book of the month was a contemporary middle grade. It is Girls in Tears, the fourth and final book in the Girls series by Jacqueline Wilson. As part of my friend book club, we read the adult sequel, which I can't remember what it's called. And so I had read the first book for a challenge. I think it was because I needed a buzzword prompt for girls. And so I was like, well, I might as well try and read the rest of the series since I've read the sequel. And this book sucked. Well, sucked is harsh. Basically, our main character, I'm not going to say the whole series, it's about a group of friends. They are teenagers, and they would have been teenagers roughly around the time that I would have been a teenager. And so it feels nostalgic for that, because it's, set in early 2000s. So a lot of the stuff that they were going through, I can, not necessarily I went through, but the time period, it feels very time capsule-y, but it hasn't really aged well. And our main character, I can't remember, Ellie, her friends are awful. I think her friends suck. I think she needs better friends. I think the way they treat her suck, and the actions that they do in this book to her suck. That's pretty much what I'm going to say for this book. I don't recommend it. I don't think it's aged well, especially the third book in this series. Ellie deals with a bit of a restrictive ED, and it's presented horribly, especially from a 2025 standpoint. But I also think even in the early 2000s, the way that her parents react to her having this is awful. Yeah, it's not great. I wouldn't recommend the series. It is a middle grade series. It's not aimed for me. But yeah, I think her friends suck, and I think Ellie needs new friends. I thought that in the adult sequel as well. I just didn't think they were very good friends. But yeah, least favorite book of the month. Probably going to be one of my least favorite books of the year. In September, I have Black Sun. I actually physically read most of this book as well. This is the first book by Rebecca Roanhorse in her adult fantasy series. It is a adult fantasy series that follows a couple of different POVs. It's set in a world where, oh my god, when it's been a month and you feel like your mind's blanking? I felt like I remembered everything, but now let's try and describe it. So we'll start with one of our main characters. He from his birth has been raised with this knowledge that he is going to be fulfilling some kind of prophecy, avenging his a 300-year-long suffering, and go to this town and overthrow the priesthood that has taken over. We have two other female characters. One of the others is the Sun Priest. She's risen herself up from the ranks of being like in the slums, basically, to be the Sun Priest, which is basically like the head of this monastery that kind of governs this country. And she is having some struggles with people not really respecting her as much because she comes from, I think it's called the Moors, is it called? She comes from the very lowest part of their country, but also she's feeling like there's some kind of conspiracy going on, and she's trying to figure that out and try to do what she thinks is the best for the people, but she's having a lot of pushback. And then our third perspective is from a character who is she's from a very special race of people that are kind of like sea-faring people, not seafaring, sea-savvy people that like, I think mostly women, and they are all kind of, sometimes they can be hunted for like different aspects of their body. Her eyes, for instance, are very luminous and they kind of give her away and people can hunt for her eyes. But she is a captain and she is assigned a task by someone, but to basically get this specific cargo, aka our guy, over to this country where our third protagonist is, and that's it. She just has to get him there. That's her task. Along the way, she makes good friends with him and she kind of gets entangled in his journey. Hopefully that made sense. This was actually a pretty short book. It was just about 300 and something pages, but I felt like it really had so much detail. I felt like the world was really, really well fleshed out, and it was quite a slow build of the story, but it's something I really enjoyed, like just thinking into and being with our characters. I think the different kind of aspects and like backgrounds and religion that these characters all have was really interesting, and the world felt very fleshed out. I will say the book did not have a map in it, which I thought was a really big oversight because it was referencing different things, and I feel like a map would have really elevated that, but that's fine. But yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I feel like I'm coming to realize, especially with adult fantasy, that I really enjoy slow burn of books and like sitting with characters and really learning about their like background and mythology and religion and like politics of the worlds. And so I feel like this book really delivered that, but it was also, once you kind of got the terminology down, it was a very easy read and it was a very enjoyable read. So yeah, really looking forward to carrying on with this series and really did very much enjoy that. My least favorite for the month, to be honest, I didn't have any really bad books for the month, so this one is just kind of my least favorite by default, but it is a short novella, I guess, that I listened to, which is To Play by Ali Hazelwood. This is it was like a 4-hour audiobook about two different rival kind of video game developing companies that are being assigned to being hired, I should say, to make a specific video game, but they don't get on. The companies have had a lot of backlash. One of them is more successful than the other, and I think they don't feel like they need the smaller group, but the smaller group wants to, and it's a big opportunity for both of them. And so the heads of these companies decide to send them away on a retreat to go and happen. And so one of our main girl from one has had a bit of a sordid relationship with a guy from another one, but she really is passionate about this idea. It means a lot to her and she wants to make this a game, and so she's determined to make it work. It was fine, like there was nothing overly wrong with it, but I feel like this is the third Ali Hazelwood thing that I've read, and all three of them have really been formulaic of the exact same kind of formula, which when I first read The Love Hypothesis, which I gave 5 stars and absolutely loved, worked. But then it feels like, having read both of the Love on the Brain and then this, they kind of just follow in a similar route of, you know, having this kind of, I mean, all the men are described in the exact same way, tall, overly tall, with a big broad chest and dark and like a bit stoic, and that the way they come off, they don't have like necessarily the best first meeting, and the girls don't think they like him, but actually he's been pining all along, is the idea. That's not necessarily what happens in this, but like that's the, you know, that's like the idea. And it just felt very samey to the other books that I've read by Ali Hazelwood. I have a couple of her other books and I am going to try reading other things from her because I have had a positive experience with The Love Hypothesis, but I think this, especially maybe in such a short format, isn't really for me, especially because it does have spice in it, and I don't have an aversion to spice, but I feel like in a 4-hour audiobook was too short for me to really care about spice. I feel like I need it to be a bit more of a slower burn for a book, which I know in general that I'm not the big short story fan, so going into this, I shouldn't have. I picked it for a specific prompt for something, which I haven't edited that video together yet, so I can't remember what it was, but that's kind of why I ended up going for it. It wasn't my fave, but I just read it, so it's just the lead. I think I gave it a 3-star, but like it wasn't terrible, but it just, yeah, I probably won't read anything else short by Ali Hazelwood, just because, especially if it's going to have spice in it, because I just am someone that needs a bit more story than I felt like this gave me. Do I think this was better than Love on the Brain? Maybe. I had a lot of issues with Love on the Brain, beyond the wild ending where that went, but just the actual structure of the story I had issues with. So then going into last month, going into October, I'm going to start with my least favorite, and that was this was a 3-star read, and that was before The Coffee Gets Cold. This was a book club pick for my family. Nope, for my friend book club again. And this was my sister's pick. And it was fine, but this is essentially a short story collection set in the same world. It's about a coffee shop that has magical powers, and that if you sit in the same place and have a specific drink, you can travel back or forward in time, but only, and you have to make sure you come back before the coffee gets cold. That's essentially the idea. It was a very short book and separated into 4 parts that basically told 4 different stories. And again, I'm not the biggest short story person. I feel like I need something a bit more meaty to get into a story. It's not something I probably will carry on with, but it wasn't like a horrendous read. It was just a very average read for me. I liked some of the stories, like I liked the ideas behind them, I like the messaging behind them, but like I'm not going to think about them again. I'm not really going to they're not going to stick with me in that sense. So yeah, it was fine. But then my favorite of October, which was also my new 5-star read for the last 4 months. I really don't rate things 5 stars very often. And so I debated rating this 5 stars, but I was like, you know what? I had such a good time with it and I really enjoyed it. And I feel like it hit those marks for me personally, that it was a 5-star, and that is Gallows Hill by Darcy Coates. This is the story of our main character. I felt like her name was Lara, but it probably wasn't. Her parents both die, and she inherits this house and this kind of winery and all of this stuff that she had never known about. She's been raised by her dad's mum for her life, and her parents sent her away when she was 8, and she has no real memories of this house or really her parents at all, and she's kind of curious as to why they even essentially abandoned her. But she also then because she inherits this winery, she realizes she has all these people's livelihood now in her hands. So she decides she's going to give it a few weeks to see how she gets on with running this business, to see if she can even do this with this business. However, there is something going on in the house. It becomes very apparent to her very quickly that there is something wrong with Gallows Hill. No one in the town talks to her about things. She hears things at night. There are certain weird things going on in the house, and it slowly develops from that. I won't say anything more because I think it was really worth it for me, the actual read. But something I love about Darcy Coates' books, which I found pretty much in all of them, is the way that she writes relationships. And I feel like that's such a strong point for me for a horror book in general, for most books, but for a horror book, is to have a character that I like, but then also relationships that I feel like are nicely fleshed out and cared about. The way that our main character develops a relationship with the people around her at the vineyard, I really enjoyed. And I always feel like sometimes they're never insidious or nasty or mean, and I always really like that, because I feel like there are leans sometimes where you could expect deceit, but there isn't always that, and I really enjoy that Darcy does that. And yeah, I really liked the development of the relationship. I really liked the kind of reasoning behind what was going on in this place, the kind of way that it was shown out, and just in general, I really enjoyed this. A few others that I've read from Darcy Coates this month, just off the bat, I read Craven Manor, which I also really ended up enjoying. The Haunting of Lee Harkness, which is I think my least favorite out of the ones that I've read, but I still quite enjoyed it. What was the other one I read by her? From Below. That was really different, actually. That was a 4, a 4-star, and that was about a abandoned wreckage of a ship at the bottom of the sea, and this group of divers that go down, and there's something going on. Really different, because most of the other ones I've read from Darcy Coates have been about haunted houses, basically mostly haunted houses, or a haunted town or something like that, whereas this one, yeah, was in the sea. Really, I really enjoyed that one. It took me a bit longer to get into because it was a bit more sciencey in terms of it gave you a lot of information about diving, but I found that one really interesting. But yeah, Gallows Hill was my favorite for the month. And that's basically it. Like I said, there are many other books that I have read, 30 other books that I've read throughout these last 4 months, but I am not going to go through them all. I am planning on doing a top 10 faves and a top 10 least faves for the months, which will go up in December, so that way will give me a chance to maybe talk about a few books that I haven't spoken about yet on my channel. And I might try, something I really want to try doing in the new year is singular reviews, either in video format or at least on my Goodreads in a way, just to actually kind of really process a bit more my thoughts about some of the things that I'm reading, especially things that I'm really enjoying or that I really don't like, but leave a profound effect on me in a negative way, because that's always so interesting to talk about as well. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you again hopefully soon. Bye.